Mr. Stewart.
All right, I'm going to talk really fast then. There's a couple things I do want to talk about, and again, to hit them both, I'm going to be very brief on the first one, and that is 702, to reemphasize the importance of that. Thanks for all of you being here. We recognize that each of you are distinguished leaders. If I could make this point in introduction to 702, all of us are responsible to the people, but those of us sitting up here have a special responsibility to the people. We go home every weekend and we talk with hundreds of people. I think we have a pulse on where the people are, far more than the executive, far more than military or intelligence officials, and I would say far more than the Senate. And so I think we have a pulse of the people, and in that regard then, when we talk about 702 and the fear and concern they have with Director Wray, if I could, I'm going to read you a communication I had from a constituent who is a national security expert official. And then I'd ask you to respond, or maybe you don't want to, but I read this to you to illustrate this is the challenge we have when it comes to reauthorizing. And much of this is shared by members of Congress as well, but quoting from him, we could show dozens of examples. Sending FBI agents to shut down local prosecutors for going after Jeff Epstein, systemic abuse of FISA, systemic abuse of First Amendment rights, targeting parents and Catholics, refusing to investigate multiple reports of sexual abuse of U.S. gymnasts. The problem is, speaking of the FBI, they have no accountability, near absolute power, and they know no one, not even Congress, can touch them. That is what many, many Americans feel. And now we have to go to them and say, yeah, we understand your concerns, but at the same time, we want to reauthorize these powers and authorities. I read that for you, as we discussed earlier, as a challenge we have. You're welcome to respond to it, although please do so briefly, or if you just recognize, yeah, we need to admit to the American people that we've made mistakes and we're going to correct it.
So, Congressman, I appreciate you sharing your constituent's letter with me. What I would say is, of course, like any major institution, we have made mistakes. Some of the descriptions in the constituent's letter are not accurate in terms of what actually happened, but absolutely we have made mistakes. And to me, the mark of a leading organization is not whether it makes mistakes or not. All major organizations, all elite organizations do, but whether or not we learn from those mistakes. And I think we have. We've made all sorts of changes, which I could go into on different issues, but we're determined to be worthy of all Americans' trust, including your constituents.
Well, and I appreciate that, because that's where we're going to find success, is if we can say that we recognize that we can do better. And to do better, the process has got to be reformed somewhat. And we look forward to working with you, because we do have to reauthorize 702. Director Haynes, this is to you. I think you're probably most appropriate to answer this. Now, I mean, there's so many things we could talk about here. We look forward to the closed hearing, as I said, but we have to talk about China. I reflect back on my military experience. There were a number of incidents, a couple times when we had American assets, American intelligence aircraft who were captured and had a forced landing in China. The P-3 incident with the J-8 is an example. And during that time, we didn't really know what our policy would be, how the U.S. would respond. In the past, the president has said pretty clearly that we would respond with military action if China were to invade Taiwan. And then shortly after that, the administration kind of walked back those comments, but it didn't occur just once, it occurred several times. We have this policy of strategic ambiguity, which has served us well for the last 30 years. But I wonder if it's not time for us to declare another policy, a new policy, and that is we will defend Taiwan. It's pretty clear the president seems to think that. And I think if we're going to deter, again, understanding the need for strategic ambiguity before, but times are different now. If we're going to deter, I think we have to be clear in saying, yes, we will defend Taiwan militarily if we have to. Director, am I wrong? And has there been a change in the administration's policy regarding ambiguity?
Thank you, Congressman. Obviously not in a position to comment on policy, but I think you're right in recognizing the president's comments on this issue, and that has been a pretty strong statement.
Okay, so let me, in the 13 seconds I have, do we agree that there would be stronger deterrence if our adversaries knew that we would defend militarily if necessary?
You mean sort of, in this particular case, I think it is clear to the Chinese what our position is based on the president's comments.
Thank you. And I only went 10 seconds over, Mr. Chairman, so I yield back.
Very, very good. Mr.